Hi, my name is Becca Yowler, and today we're going to talk about research questions. So the fundamental thing we need to learn before we start searching, before we start doing anything, is how to write a good research question. We're going to talk about that today. Now, a research question may be something you've heard about before or maybe not, but a research question is a question that is intended to answer a bigger question or solve an issue or revisit a topic in a new way. So it hasn't been answered before, or it's had contradictory answers in the past, or you're going to answer it in a new way, or perhaps it's been answered in a way that you don't like and you want to challenge now. So the question itself is, of course, a question, but it's a little more complex than that. Now, it's important to know that a research question does not answer a question that has already been answered. Well, how do I know if it's already been answered? Well, a simple answer to that is Google it and see if an answer pops up. You can do some initial pre-searching to see, does Google find an answer to your question? Does more than one source answer your question? If you put the elements of your question into a database, would you get hundreds or even thousands of results? If you can answer yes to any of these questions, it's probably not a good research question. So let's take a step back and think about research itself. Research is not an information smoothie. So you do not gather information, blend it all up, and dump it out into a paper for your professor to read. Nobody wants to read that paper. We are not a Jamba Juice. Research is not a smoothie. Research is a process of finding information. It is not linear, it is not simple, and it is not a blender. Now, you may do some synthesis. You may summarize what other people have said. You may evaluate what other people said. But good research will add something more. New data, new information, a new experiment you have done, a survey you've completed, your take on a topic. You're going to add something else to your research. So it isn't just a smoothie. So your job is to find that information. So once you have a good question and you have done some of this searching, you have to analyze everything in light of your question. And then you make answers. You make recommendations. You draw conclusions on your own. And that's what makes a research paper or assignment or project interesting to read and interesting to do. So if you have done that work and you have come up with interesting conclusions, all of a sudden you've got something that's actually interesting, and your professor will enjoy reading your paper, or your classmates will enjoy hearing what you have to say. So in this way, information gathering is not the goal. Your goal is not to go out and gather as much information as you can. Rather, it's a tool for answering the question or solving a problem. The analysis you do is going to answer the question you have asked. And a one-sentence answer to your research question becomes your thesis statement. The thesis statement comes after the research question, comes after you've done some work. You don't start with the thesis statement and then go do some searching. The thesis statement is a one-sentence answer to your research question. So what makes a good research question? Well, good research questions are specific and focused. Good research questions are manageable. You're looking for that just right fit, like Goldilocks, where you're going to find enough information to do your project, but not so much that you're overwhelmed. So you want to make sure you find that happy medium, and your question will help you find that. A good research question is also researchable and defensible. That means that you can make a good case for why this question needs to be researched, and you can find enough information out there to actually do it. Now, not every question is a good research question. Some research questions are not great at all. There are some that don't actually ask a question, or they ask it in such a way that they're actually fuzzy, or they have too many parts, or they're so open-ended that there can be 1,000, 1,000,000, or maybe only just one answer we don't know, or that's impossible to answer with the evidence we have. So let's look at a couple examples of some poor research questions. What were the events of August 1914 that led to the start of the First World War? Now, this is a poor research question for one very simple reason. You can answer it with a Google search. Now, you might be able to write a paragraph, or you might be able to write a more nuanced description of this, but you're not going to be able to contribute anything new unless suddenly new evidence has arisen. This is a question that's been answered. It's been answered by history, and it's been answered by historians. So this isn't really even a research question. What is the best solution for homelessness? Well, this is way too fuzzy and open-ended. What does best mean here? How are we defining solution? Homelessness where? Who? How? There's no good way to answer this question in a way that's going to make sense. And you would get so lost in doing the research that you might find yourself lost in sources. Or you may not even be able to find an answer that would work. So this one is too fuzzy. Did Shakespeare really write the plays attributed to him, and what are the basic features of his tragedy? And in what ways could Twelfth Night be viewed as a tragedy rather than a comedy? Well, obviously, this one is too many questions in one. And, quite frankly, only one of them is a good research question anyway. The first one is a yes or no question. Did he or didn't he? What are the basic features of Shakespeare's tragedies? Well, that is easily researchable, and one good Google search will find you that answer. You don't even need to go into a database for that one. So the only question in here that's an actual research question is the third one. In what way could Twelfth Night be viewed as a tragedy rather than a comedy? Now, if you pulled that out, that would be a good research question. But when you nest it in with all of these others, you've just made it too confusing and too big. Have U.S. mortgage regulations changed significantly to avoid another major crisis similar to the one the housing market experienced in 2008 and following? This one's iffy because you might be able to make a case that they have, but ultimately it's just a yes-no question. So you have to make sure if you're asking a yes-no question, it's something that you can actually answer. And we can't really answer this question because we don't know. This is asking us to predict the future in a way that we, as armchair economists, are not going to be able to do. This would be maybe a research question for someone getting their PhD in economics, maybe. And even they might have trouble answering it. So one of the ways that I like to think about research question is by doing what I call research question Mad Libs. Mad Libs were a thing we did in the car when I was a kid, when we would go on family vacations. Maybe you've done them. But you basically just fill in the blanks with nouns or verbs. So to what extent has something had an impact on something else? What is the best way to evaluate something? Now you see this has something changed significantly enough question in here. Again, I caution you on that one. Just be sure that your parameters are enough that you can actually answer the question. How valid is an argument? Or was something really as significant of a cause as scholars and researchers assume? These are all really good places to start. My favorite way to start a research question is, in what way? Whenever I have trouble editing a research question, I change my first words to, in what way? And suddenly, it makes more sense for me. So when you finally do have a research question that you think is pretty good, evaluate it. See if it is good, bad, tragic. Hopefully it won't be tragic if you've followed through this video and through the modules in your Canvas course. My guess is it'll be okay. So, is it a good question? If not, why not? How could you fix it? Could changing the words to "in what way" help? If you're struggling with this step, this is a great place to consult with your librarian. Librarians are so good at research questions because in the back of their head, they kind of know what's out there to begin with. So check in with your librarian if you're having trouble developing a research question. Check with your peers. Check with your professor. But whatever you do, try to have a question in mind before you get started doing any kind of research. As for next steps, we're going to talk about what to do with a research question once you've got a good one. We're going to talk about breaking it down into the elements of the question and how to use those to do quality searches. But you'll see that all of this hinges on having a good research question. So again, if you're having trouble developing a research question, contact your librarian. If you're having trouble understanding what a research question is, reach out to the instructor for this course, and they'll help you. Otherwise, we hope to see you in the library, and we hope to see you using research questions to make your research even better than it could have already been. Thank you.